Hello, Sumit. In today's video, we'll be learning how to take body measurements. So we're just going to be taking the full body measurement. But first of all, we'll be taking the blouse measurements. We'll also be measuring for skirt and we'll be measuring for trouser. So if there's any part I omitted, you can drop it in the comment section. Then I'll treat it probably in my next video. So I already have my parts of the body that I'll be measuring. I already have them written down. So this is my model for today. So we'll be taking let's take for the blouse first. The first one we'll be taking is blouse measurement. Then I will also be explaining why you see that when you're taking your measurement, you know the front is always longer than the back with about 2 inches, although it varies depending on the body size and shape you're working with. Okay, so we'll be taking the blouse measurement. So we'll be measuring from the shoulder to her hip height line. So the first measurement we'll be taking for the blouse is her bust measurement. Can you see? So when you're measuring, one thing you should take note of is how you hold your tape. You can see the tape on my hand like this. Then you don't just come and tighten it this way, no. So when you want to take your measurement, a finger should be underneath the tape like this. You can decide to use this finger, anyone that is comfortable for you. But make sure that you have your finger like this and the tape can still move like this. Do you get? So her bust measurement is 42.5. So after that, we have to take her waist measurement. So how do you determine how? So after taking the bust measurement, we have to get her waist measurement. Now this is her half length, right? Now in every human's body, if you're taking your measurements, you're working with a woman's body, and you want to get their waist measurement, which is the half length of, in case you're making a gown and you need a half cut before adding the skirt part. So that's the part we want to get here now. So how do you determine the position of that place? From this part, when you touch their body like this, come down, you will see that this part is going inside. You'll see something like, I don't know, but it's always tinier at this point. Or if you're working with somebody that her waist is not smaller than her body, just tell them to bend to the side. So any parts that goes in like this, you can see how my fingers are inside. That's the waistline of the person. So now, here we serve as a half length, right? So for me to get her waist circumference, I'm going to measure on this part that went in. So with my finger underneath it, can you see? So her waist is about 39. That's her waist circumference. So now we want to get her hip height, right? Where her hip measurement will be resting on. How do you get her hip height? Normally, if you're working with, if you don't have the person's measurement, you didn't measure from their shoulder to where their hip will be resting on, you can always add 8 inches to your waist measurement to get your hip height. Like your half length now, since we've measured here like this, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to get the hip height measurement. That is if you did not measure it on your client's body. But if the person is a bigger size, you add 9 inches. Do you understand? So now, let us get her hip height, where her hip measurement will be resting on. Now, if you want to get your hip height, you should measure it and make sure that the tape stops at where her hip, your client's hip, is more obvious, like the biggest part of her hip. That's where your hip height is going to rest on. So here is her hip height, and it's about 25 inches, right? It is 25 inches. So I'll go ahead and measure it. I'll measure it round like this. Can you see? With my finger under the tape like this. Then you try to put the tape down and take it up also. So her hip measurement is 47. So I'll go ahead and write 47. So the next point now is to get her shoulder from. We need to get her shoulder measurement. Now, how do you determine your shoulder measurement or your client's shoulder measurement? You know we have shoulder bones, right? So from this edge to this edge, there are shoulder bones. So here now, this is her shoulder bone here. And this is her shoulder bone here. So I'm going to measure from this shoulder bone to this shoulder bone to get her shoulder measurement. So I'll go ahead and measure like this, right? So her shoulder measurement is 16 inches. So please make sure before you measure your shoulder, you measure your client's shoulder, check for their shoulder bone. It is on the shoulder bone that your measuring tape will rest on. So I'll go ahead and write 16 inches. Then now we have to determine the chest line, the bust, the apex line, which is the nipple point. Then we have to determine her under bust also. Now, if you're working with a very busty person, you can ask the person to touch where their nipple is for you. But if you don't have the measurement, because most times some clients, I don't think anybody, some people will want you touching that part of their body. So now, if you don't have the measurement for where their nipple point is like this, you can go ahead and from your chest line, the standard is 2 inches from your chest line to get your nipple point, which is the apex line. So now for me to get her chest line, I will measure from her shoulder through to this part of the armhole like this. This is her chest line. So her chest line is about 9 inches, right? So now from there to this point, is this where your nipple is? You can see that it is 2 inches. This is 9 inches for her chest line. Then to this point is her nipple point. Like I told you before, the standard is 2 inches to get your nipple point, which is your apex. So it's 2 inches from your chest line. So now her chest line is 9. Her nipple point is 11 inches. Then her under bust, can you see how I'm placing it? If you're working with a very busty person, make sure that your tape is going, maybe the person will be wearing a bra, make sure that your tape is going under the bra wire. Do you get? Your tape should be resting on the bra wire beneath her breast. So that's how to get your under bust. So her under bust here is 14, her nipple point is 11, her chest line is 9 inches. So I'll go ahead and write that.
So here, I forgot to show us how to take your nipple to nipple measurement. It is very necessary for your basic body pattern draft. So this is how to place your tape. You place it from one point of your nipple to the other point of your nipple. So what you see in this photo is nipple to nipple measurement, like you measure from your left nipple to your right nipple.
So we've gotten this part, right? Now we have to know the length of our half length. We have to know, we only measure the circumference, we measure it round. Now we have to know the full length where our half length will be resting on. So like I said before, this is the point where our half length will be resting on. And her half length is 16 inches. Can you see it? So this is 16 inches. This serves as a half length. So I'll go ahead and write 16 inches. So now we have to determine the full length of the blouse. Full length of the blouse. So now, how do you determine that? Checking if you're making a blouse and you're not doing a crop top, or if you're not doing a crop top, it depends on the pattern of blouse you're making though. But the normal length of your blouse, it should rest on where your hip is. So when you're making it, you just measure it straight to your hip height point like this. So this is her full length. This is her blouse full length and it's 25 inches. Okay, so now I want to show us why this the front pattern is always longer than the back pattern. Now, if she was a very busty person, can you see what we have here? If she was a very busty person, this place is going to come out fuller than it is, and it's going to take more tape. Do you get? But she's not very busty. So now you measure to this place, this 25 inches, right? And this is the point where it is resting on. I'm just going to mark it. So this is the point, like this is a hip point. So I'm just marking it to show us what I'm saying. Then to her back, this is her back side. Let's measure it from this point also. So if you measure it this way, this is the line. Now can you see why the front is always longer than the back? Now on the back we have 23 inches on the back side, while the front is 25 inches. So I hope this explains why we always have the front longer than the back, because the front we have boobs in front, then the back is just flat. So there's no way the measurements are going to be the same, because the front will be taking more tape than the back. So we're done with the blouse measurement. So the next step we'll be going to is to take our skirt measurement. So the first thing now is to determine how high the person wants the skirt to be. Is it high waist? If the person wants it to be high waist, it means you're going to start from, sorry, excuse me, it means you are going to start from this waistline we measured earlier for the blouse, if it's high waist. But if it's not high waist, you're coming down 2 inches from there. So this will be your normal waistline. Okay, your trouser is here. So this will be your normal waistline. But if you're making high waist, take it up to this point. This 16 inches you measured from the shoulder. If you're doing high waist, you start your skirt measurement from there. But if you're not doing high waist, just come down by 2 inches to get your normal waistline. Or you ask the person where they wear their skirts, the position they put their skirt, so you can start your measurement from there. So now let's assume I'm measuring for high waist, and let us take full skirt, right? So now for me to get the length, I'll just take it down. Depends on how high she wants it, but let's say 37 inches is her full length. Then, like I said before, you want to get your hip height, right? Now this is where we measured for the hip circumference, right? Now from this point now to where her hip measurement will be resting on is 9 inches. Like I said earlier, if the person is on a bigger size, 9. If the person is small or a smaller size, use 8. Do you understand? So now this is it. Her hip height is 9 inches. That is from her high waist to this part of her hip is 9 inches. But if you're starting from this point, this part of her hip is 9 inches. But if you're starting from this point, from her normal waist, you know this one is a high waist length. So if you're coming down to the normal waist, it's going to be 7 inches for the hip height. So always make sure that you measure your client. So because we're working with high waist, I'm going to use 9 inches for her hip height, right? So I'll go ahead and measure 9 inches. Then we already have our waist measurement. If you're measuring skirts, always make sure you measure the waist. So the waist measurements I measured earlier is what I will use. But if the person's skirt is starting below, you measure that space where the person wear the skirts on, because they are not usually the same. So can you see? They are not always the same. So it depends on where the person wants to start wearing the skirts from. So you just measure the waist round. So after that, so the next thing now, her hip height is 9. Now her hip circumference, like we measured earlier, I'm just going to show us again. So her hip circumference is 47, like we measured earlier. Then we have her underbutt. How do you measure for underbutt? You know those skirts you see that are fitted and they just give you this shape, they just bring your boot shape out. It's because of the underbutt measurement and the tightening they do there. So you turn your client to the back side. This is where her waist is, right? So you measure from here. So this line here, can you see? Not here, here. Can you see it? This is her underbutt, right? This is her underbutt. This is her waistline. You can see where my tape is. So this point, these are underbutt measurement. And that's about 17 inches. So from her waist to get her underbutt measurement, 17 inches. So when we'll be drafting our skirt pattern, when I start imputing all of this, you will not be confused. So if she's making a full skirt now, from her high waist point to this point is 37. So let's assume she's making a short skirt. You come to this waist point also and you measure it. It depends on where she wants it. So if she wants it on her nail, it's 23. Above her nail, 21, right? So that is that about skirt measurements. So we're done measuring the blouse and the skirt. So the next thing, now let's go ahead and measure our sleeve, because the sleeve is very important because most people find it difficult to work with. So to measure the sleeve now, the first thing you have to determine when measuring your sleeve is your sleeve cap. And please, where do your sleeves start from? It starts from your shoulder bone. You see where the shoulder to shoulder measurement we did earlier, the shoulder bone where it stopped, this shoulder bone here, that's where your sleeve is starting from. Do you understand? So let's say the first thing we want to do, let's get the full length of our sleeve. So the full length of our sleeve is 25 inches. So I'll go ahead and write 25 inches. Now it depends, if you're making a long sleeve, you measure it to this point. Now if you're making the elbow length sleeve, you measure it to this point. If you're making a three-quarter sleeve, you measure it up to this point. Do you understand? So we'll be taking all of that measurement. But the first thing you need to do when you're taking your sleeve measurement is to take your sleeve cap. You take your sleeve cap. So now the standard for sleeve cap is usually 4 inches. Now you can see where this Apollo is resting on. You can see that it's saying 4 inches, right? Because the polo is not like our normal blouse that we tailor, right? So now the shoulder is always coming down when you're working with polo. You can see the one on my body also. But from this shoulder bone to get the sleeve cap, you come down with like 4 inches. If you're working with a very bigger person, you can make it 4.5 or 5 inches. But the bigger the sleeve cap, the wider the sleeve becomes. Do you understand? So now let's say we're using 4 inches as a sleeve cap. So I'll go ahead and write 4. Then let's take her. Now the sleeve cap is also known as the bicep. It is also called the bicep. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead to take, let's say you're making a short sleeve, a very short sleeve to this point. It's going to be 10 inches. So it depends on what your client wants. You write down your 10 inches. If it's to her elbow, you write 14 inches because it's 14 on her elbow. If you're making three-quarter sleeve, it's going to be about 19 inches. Then the full length, like we measured earlier, is 25. So now you've gotten all of the measurements, all of the is it vertical or horizontal measurement? You've gotten all of the vertical measurements like this, like the point where your measurements will be resting on. Now if you're making a full sleeve, please, you will still take note of the bicep. You will still take note because you're going to measure it round. When you measure this, the biggest part of her arm is your bicep. So when you measure it round, whatsoever it gives you, that's where you put on the bicep. Then if it's a straight long sleeve, or you just come to the elbow, you measure her elbow round. You know her elbow length is 14. You measure the elbow circumference, is going to rest on the 14. Then you come down, you measure this place and put it there. So by that we're drafting the sleeve also, you understand. So the next thing now is to get the circumference measurements of all the points that we've marked. So you can see for the biggest part of her arm, she's having 17.5. Like I said, always make sure that your finger can go underneath your tip. So it's like this. Then that about her bicep circumference, 17.5. Then we have to measure her elbow. But when you're measuring your client's elbow, don't allow it to be straight. They're going to fold it for you a bit like this, so that when they wear the dress, they can be comfortable folding their hands. Do you get? So you can see how I'm placing it. Can you see? With my finger underneath it like this, her elbow measurement is 16.5. So I'll go ahead and write 16.5. So now we want to get this part. Now you don't just come and measure here like this. If you just measure here to get it, it's not going to pass through this part because obviously here is bigger than this point. So you ask your client to fold their hands like this. Then to get this measurement, you measure here. Can you see it? So whatsoever it gives you is the measurement you're going to be using for this place, except you're working with a stretchy fabric. So here it is 9.5. So like this, now we're done with how to measure for our sleeve. The next step we'll be working on is trouser measurement. So you want to work with trouser. The only difference with the skirt is the crotch measurement and the lap measurement, then the nail measurement. That's the only difference. So now her hip height, like we've gotten from the skirt, is 9 inches from her waist. That's if she's making a high waist trouser. So it's 9 inches. Her hip circumference is 47. So first of all, you get the person's hip height, 9 inches, you write it. Then her hip circumference is 47, you write it. Then her waist is 42.5. No, okay. Her waist is 39. Her waist is 39. Is her bust that is 42.5. Her waist is 39. So you measure the waist, you measure the hip height, measure her hip circumference, right? So after that, the next thing you're going to be doing now, you want to get the crotch measurement. Now, most clients are not comfortable with this, but your clients will have to open their legs like this for you to get their crotch depth. Where do you see this part? This is the crotch part of this tights I'm wearing. So it is this part we want to get, where this curve will rest on. That's the crotch measurement. So for you to get that, from wherever they want the waist of the trouser to start from, you put your tape from there and measure it down. Can you see? So according to this my model's body, her own is 13.5. Her crotch is 13.5. So I'll go ahead and write 13.5. Now, let's assume you did not measure your client for the crotch measurement. How do you get it? If you're working with a smaller size, smaller body, just divide the hip by 4, then add 1 inch. Do you get? Divide the hip by 4 and add 1 inch. But if you're working with a bigger size, divide the hip by 4 and add 1.5. That's how to get your crotch measurement. So now, since we've gotten the crotch measurement, you go ahead and measure the lap. The fattest part of their lap is where you measure. Her own is 29.5. Can you see it? 29.5 for the lap. Then we'll measure the nail. Don't make the nail so tight so that it will be free on your client. So it's 20.5. 29.5 for the lap, 20.5 for the hip. So you go ahead and write. So the next thing now is to determine the full length of the trouser. Now let's assume you're making a knicker. Above the knee will be about 20 inches, right? On top the knee will be about 22. Then if you're making a full length trouser, for her, it depends on where she wants it. Flowing on the floor will be like 42. Then coming up a bit will be like 39. So to get your trouser measurement done, this is all you need for your trouser measurement. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any question, you can ask. So that will be the end of the measurement video.